YellowJackets. This is the latest series to come out from Showtime, and it has taken the internet by storm because, my goodness, is this brilliant. I want to start off by saying this. I am a fan of television, and I like a lot of the ways it's developed over the years, but sometimes you just want to go back to that classic era where things were just so brilliant and satirized and it just had this great feeling. So that being considered, when I'm talking about YellowJackets here, the actual way this show is structured and the way it plays out and the way it feels reminds me of that classic era of television that was on the precipice of becoming Netflix and Amazon. We're at those last-ditch efforts when people were obsessed with Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, all those things were huge right there when Lost was kind of still relevant and would morph into the modern-day television mystery box story. YellowJackets just has that feeling of that classic era of television that hasn't left, but it still hasn't been as prevalent as it has before. It does not feel like a show that would strive if it was on a streaming service or something that you could binge, just because this is a type of story that needs to be told over the 10 episodes, the 10 weeks, and naturally come to its conclusion, naturally come to its revelations, and it's so brilliant. It is probably one of the most recent shows I could think of that actually encapsulates what I like about television perfectly. It's the weekly story where new things are being, revealed to us. It's the weekly story where new characters are seemingly coming in and making the story more challenging. It's giving different character moments to each episode, and it is so brilliant and perfected amazingly that YellowJackets is honestly one of my favorite shows to come out in the last few years, just because I want more stuff like this. Saying whatever you will about Lost and if it worked or not, Lost really took the, television world and it just said, hey, you're going to have to tune in to really figure out this story. And I will say there's a lot of Lost in YellowJackets, but there's also a lot of modern stuff. It's also got this really cool underlying thing of Heathers or Mean Girls, right there in the 90s to early 2000s era of high school, where it's dealing with those issues, but you're taking it to this extreme place, and it's brilliant. This show is just absolutely brilliant and fantastic. So if you still don't know the premise of YellowJackets, imagine it's 1996, you are on this high school soccer team, you're about to head to some national championship, who knows where, you're taking this luxurious plane, and the plane crashes, and you and your entire soccer team are stranded in this forest that might have some mythical connotations trying to keep you trapped there, and you have to learn how to survive with this group of women who is just, in that era and in that age category where they're hormonal, they're angsty, they are angry, they have questions that need answering, and people like each other, people hate each other. How do you survive when all of that just emotion is bottled into one location? That is one half of this story. The other half is 25 years in the present day, when the survivors of this plane crash are dealing with the ramifications of maybe being outed by one of these people. It could be a reporter, it could be one of them, just secretly revealing this symbol that they've been seeing throughout their time in this forest. It is really well done. First off, just the cinematography alone is very cinematic, but television cinematic. It doesn't try to look beautiful or overshot in anything oh man, this would just be perfect in IMAX. It's no, we're on television. We know our budget for television. We're going to show you some beautiful landscapes. We're going to show you some beautiful cinematography. We're going to have some great sets and costuming, but it's going to look like it's made for television. And that is a highlight for this, because if it tried to overextend itself with some, expensive shots or just taking too many big chances, it wouldn't work so well. The fact that it's kind of reserved in itself just really adds to this. And the makeup effects for this are unbelievable. I don't know if they use prosthetics or anything for certain shots when there are some characters who are attacked or hurt or bleeding or broken, but the blood quibs, if there is any, they're used perfectly. The characterizations of the people when they are just cut or scarred, oh, it's gorgeous. The makeup is so well done on this show. It's some of the best I've seen in a long time because it looks authentic. It looks like this person's leg needs to come off. It looks like this person got their head scratched apart. It looks amazing. I really like that. And I think just sticking to the stuff in the forest alone that is a lot of good story elements there, because you get a lot of young actresses who are still coming into their own in this industry. They're right at that age where it's like the mid-teens to the early 20s to the mid-20s, where you are developing your skills in this industry. This is a showcase for young actresses where it's like you can play this type of character, you can play this type of character, and you have to ball that all up in one reserved place. Like, every single storyline that is taking place on that island, whether it's like the chance of survival, how do we learn to fire a gun, how do we learn to keep our hormones in check, how do we learn to find food, how do we learn to just love and care and help people around us. All of that just works for all of these young actresses, and they're doing a fantastic job. There isn't one I think is miscast or out of place. Of course, there are some that I think have more interesting stories than others. I love the young Natalie story because it's just her, this woman who's kind of hurt in her life, learning how to fall in love and how she can have those connections and how that relates to her future self is beautiful. Laura Lee has a really compelling story where you think this character is going to be the one-note character that's very steeped in this one idea. She gets a lot to do connected to Lottie, and Lottie has, again, a great story, and it works well. But of all the young actresses on, like, the forest setting and in that world, I think the actress playing Jackie is phenomenal because that is the character we open up the show with. I don't think that's a spoiler. She's the first one we meet. She is with her boyfriend, and suddenly we are left to think she is our lead character. She's the one we're going to focus on. And you see her literally go through every single range of emotion in this, where she is either the bad guy, she is the good guy, she is against everyone, she is with everyone. It is such a compelling character just because every little motivation she has is compelled for herself, but herself is also compelled to benefit the group. And how does she want to work with all these people? How does she go against everyone? It's fascinating because that's how you do the supporting character that is supposed to be the big deal, because she is intrinsically connected to Shauna, and Shauna is kind of the pseudo actual lead of this thing, especially in the present day storyline, which we'll get to. But in the past, she has some of the most interesting stuff to deal with because there's so much just emotion with her being like perceived as this certain type of woman who is perfect and doesn't do anything wrong, with the mistakes that she makes before coming to the island, coming back to haunt them. It's great, and how that ties into Jackie is beautiful. Jackie is like the biggest mystery left unsolved. I'm not going to spoil anything with Jackie, but with that character, that's kind of like the cloud of mystery that surrounds this show. Like, Jackie is the prominent one here. What is her actual things that happen with Jackie? That is kind of like a big deal there. So seeing all these young actresses just have some great opportunities to shine. Samantha Hanratty does a lot of good here too as Misty, and I cannot wait to talk about Misty when we talk about the adult version, but just that really good creepy energy that this woman is so desperately in love with somebody and how that affects her in that timeline. I want to do a big video where I talk about the spoilers and just like the reveals and the moments that I love from this show, so I'm not going to say anything in particular. But there's some great moments here with Misty where she is actively trying to keep herself in the position of power by literally drugging people. I'm not going to say anything else, but it's just like, that is brilliant and that is cool. Because you're just like, she is perceived as one thing, she's doing another thing. That's one of the bigger themes, especially in like the younger actresses, where, oh, you're perceived as the girl next door. Oh, you're actually doing something different here to get that right. Oh, you're perceived as like the goth, emotionless chick, but oh, you're actually falling in love with the story. Oh, you're perceived as the harmless girl who's kind of like likes the coach, but oh, actually you're the one that's going to probably save everybody's life and do the actions that need to be necessary. That is insanely cool. That makes for great storytelling. The atmosphere on the island with like the mystery in the forest, and is there something else on there? Is there some magnetic or magical forces keeping them there? That is really cool. But the actual like present day stuff, again, I said it's an actresses showcase for the young actors. This again is another actresses showcase, but it's for seasoned actors and just showing like, hey, we still can do something pretty cool here. Because it's nice. Every one of the modern day actresses, they just have such great chemistry, great power, great presence. And that's just because the dialogue feels realistic and it feels sharp, where it's like these people went through a traumatic experience. The world is literally watching them, but from afar, where they're not actively in pursuit of them in every day in every situation. If you look them up, you know who they are instantly. And that to me is really cool. We're like literally learning somebody's entire history on the internet becomes a part of the story. And that is so fascinating to see. So in the present day, Shauna is a main character played by Melanie Lynskey, and she is an actress who I've seen her in a lot. I have never really remembered anything she's done, but I know who she is, and what a great performance. Because you're perceived as one thing, the great housewife, you become another thing, where suddenly the past ramifications of stuff you did start to haunt you, and her relationship with her daughter, her relationship with her husband, you're seeing that just play out so amazingly and energetically. It just breaks down and reassembles itself in this amazing story, and Melanie delivers a fantastic performance. Same with Tawny Cypress, who is playing the older version of Ty. That is a really fun story too, and I think out of all the ones of the present day, it's the one I was the least interested in. But like halfway through the episode, or halfway through the season I should say, they switch gears where it's like, no, here's why Ty is kind of broken and more broken than the rest of them. So here's how she is dealing with this while trying to have a political career, when literally everyone is only interested in her past and not what she has to do for the future. That is really intense and really cool, and makes for some great stuff. And to me, though, the two highlights of the present day actresses, of course, have to be Juliette Lewis as the older Natalie, because that performance is so hard, I think, to deliver earnestly. You are just slowly showing how this woman is breaking down over time. She is definitely dealing with like the most of having the weight of the world on her shoulders, because she's in and out of rehab. She's in and out of broken relationships and broken happiness. And conveying every emotional spectrum just perfectly like that is so hard to do convincingly. But the way she just brushes certain things off, and the way she reveals them again, and the way she's generally trying to make herself happy, and the way when that gets too much, she pushes people away. It is really intense, and it is really cool, and just amazing. Like, this is the kind of work, again, if you are any actress in Hollywood, this is the kind of property you're like, oh, you are actually making some very nuanced, very realistic characters who are dealing with trauma. This whole thing's about trauma, and Natalie just exemplifies that in a really fascinating way. And Juliette Lewis, who is just on the verge of breaking down at every single moment, having to restrain herself, it's so cool to see. And it's just some intense and amazingly gripping performances, but she is only outshined by the charismatic and fantastic Christina Ricci as the modern day Misty, which I've really loved Christina Ricci for a long time. I think she's a tremendous actress and somebody who is a fun presence on screen. The way she just carries the dialogue, where she just rambles on and it just keeps going and going, and how that turns into like this terrifying serial killer-esque portrayal of a woman who has experienced heartache and hardships. It's amazing, and it's terrifying, and she is just the quirky kind of weird that makes you uncomfortable, but you are also drawn into that uncomfortableness, and you just adore it. And the chemistry that all four women play off each other in the present day, it is amazing. And how their storylines intersect with their own mystery building up, like, oh, who's this mysterious person that is blackmailing them? Who is this person that's trying to get the reporter information? What are their husbands and their wives up to that connect to all this stuff? It is fantastic. It is so smartly is not a word, it is so well written that every piece of dialogue is delivered perfectly and amazingly. One of my favorite pieces of dialogue, and it's not really a spoiler, you see Melanie Lynskey's Shauna is talking to her daughter, and her daughter's trying to expose a secret that would break her parents' marriage. And Shauna just goes, do you know how much divorce lawyers cost? Do you know how much that's going to suck for you, having to live with your dad part-time when he introduces you to his new girlfriend, or he starts asking how young girls want to dress and how they like deal with older men, when he starts coming to you for dating advice for the people that you are talking to? And I'm just like, that is something you would never really hear a mother say to her daughter, but that entire just like speech is so well written and feels very authentic. And it is such a well-made show. Just everything fires on all cylinders. The mysteries are great. The characters are great. The writing is great. The directing is great. YellowJackets is just this show that feels like it came out at the wrong time. And I hope more shows try to emulate what it is doing here, because it is brilliant. It is pieced together perfectly. And seeing a show dedicated to these women dealing with a trauma that isn't associated with a man ruining their lives, it's just a collective experience, that is really cool to see. And it's very awesome that a show like this is finding its audience. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but it did get renewed for a second season, and I have to imagine there's going to be more mysteries afoot, there's going to be more fun at foot, and we're just going to build up this creepy psychological horror thing and see where that goes. Because YellowJackets happens to be one of the best shows I've seen in a while, and it just reinvigorates my passion for television. So YellowJackets Season 1, I am going to give a 10 out of 10. And thank you guys for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.